Good day and thank you for joining. I am Sherilyn Francis, and on behalf of the South Carolina Tobacco-Free Collaborative, we welcome you to part 3 of our Health Equity webinar series. The South Carolina Tobacco-Free Collaborative is focused on eliminating the toll of tobacco use by providing leadership, guidance, and resources to state and local partners. The South Carolina Tobacco-Free Collaborative's partnerships and coalitions are utilized to address local tobacco issues and to promote positive public health policies at the community level. The purpose of the collaborative is to provide leadership in the development of state, community, and local tobacco policies, to facilitate meetings of interested organizations and communities, to promote opportunities for future and current organizations in the space of research, trends, and legislative issues, and to promote and support advocacy for tobacco-safe communities at the regional, state, and national levels. I now present to you today's webinar entitled Teen and Young Adult Tobacco Prevention, presented by Dr. Stephen Kelder and Mr. Duncan Van Deusen. Also by Dr. Alexander Prokhorov and Dr. Ashish Arya. The objectives for today's webinar are to characterize national trends in cigarette and electronic cigarette use among teens and young adults, to eliminate the longitudinal association, to estimate the longitudinal association between non-cigarette tobacco use and subsequent cigarette smoking initiation among U.S. youth, to integrate translational research strategies into tobacco prevention initiatives and/or interventions, and to evaluate best practices for teen and young adult tobacco prevention and cessation. And now, Dr. Kelder.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. What I'm going to talk about for the next 10 minutes is about e-cigarettes and translational activities in terms of prevention of the initiation and onset of the e-cigarette. So this first slide just shows, a basic graph about the historic youth smoking rates, and that includes all forms of smoking. And you can see that they've been going down over the past decade. And if we extended the graph backwards, there'd be even a longer and heavier decline in smoking. So then we see in the last, since 2015 or so, or 13, 15, an increase in e-cigarette use. So the problem with this is that e-cigarettes appear to be re-socializing young people back to, breathing things into their lungs and blowing out smoke. So what we've got in this slide is the illustration of the dramatic increase in e-cigarette use up through 2015. We used the YRBS data for this, and they have not released 17 yet. And we also see, e-cigarettes rise in popularity, in that the overall use of cigarette, when included with the e-cigarettes, is plateauing and perhaps even rising. So next slide. But there's a little bit of hope. So in 2016, when we look at the Monitoring the Future study, we're seeing a reduction in all forms of tobacco use and a reduction in e-cigarette use. And I should say that the data has just been made available for 2017, and we see a bump up again. So there's a little bit of bumpy trends over time. But clearly, when we look at these numbers, we see that there's too many kids using these devices. If we looked at the overall use rates, like the lifetime use rates, it would be much higher. And when 40% of the population of youth, particularly high school kids, are trying e-cigarettes, and about half of them are regularly using them on a monthly or perhaps even a more frequent basis, then we know we have a public health problem. So I assume that a lot of you know about e-cigarettes. When I started doing presentations like this, I felt it was important to let people know that there's basic parts: the battery, the heater, atomizer, and then the cartridge. So without digging too deep into this, e-cigarettes have something inside of them, which is called e-juice, the technical firm name. So it's the nicotine liquid that's inside of there, and it's heated up and it's vaporized into an aerosol. aerosolized with an atomizer, and that's what is breathed in through the lungs. There's a battery, and sometimes there's a reservoir that can be refilled, sometimes there's a cartridge, sometimes they're disposable. Each one maybe will have equivalent of a pack of cigarettes or more, depending on the size. One of the little problems with e-cigarettes is when kids, younger kids, high school kids, are taking them apart and directly dripping the e-juice liquid onto look in the red, that coil in the end of the cigarette is the heating element, and that can make it more toxic, the vapor that comes in. Just an example of the variety of kinds, and if you've been paying attention to this, you know that the marketplace has changed considerably. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of different kinds of devices out there, from what we call the cig-alikes at the top end of this graph, all the way down to multi-component, what they call mods or modular units, with varying degrees of technology and ability for the user to control. I want to mention a new device that's been out for maybe a year and a half or so, but they're rapidly gaining in popularity. And this is one that's called the Joule. It looks like a thumb drive that you would put into your laptop. In fact, that's the way you charge it. You can plug it right into your laptop and charge the battery. Children that we've been anecdotally talking to, and school personnel are reporting confiscating a bunch of these. Parents, schools should be aware that this is what they look like, because across the nation there's a restriction in the use of e-cigarettes by children. Most schools or states have banned their use or included them in their anti-tobacco prohibitions. So this is an up-and-comer that you should pay attention to, the Joule. So one of the issues with children and youth is that there's many different flavors, and we've done studies here in Texas and others throughout the country that have shown that youth are interested in flavors. If you've got kids, or if you hang out with them, you know that they like that intense burst of flavor in their mouth through gum or gummy bears or all sorts of forms of candy. So the e-liquids are the primary driver. The flavor in the e-liquids is the primary driver in the desire for kids to try these in the first place. Unfortunately, the majority of the e-liquids, e-juice, contain nicotine. Sometimes the kids know it, and sometimes they don't know it. Sometimes they're just given the cartridge and it's unlabeled, or they just don't know. So once exposed to nicotine, there's a likelihood that there's a chance of becoming addicted or starting symptoms of dependence. And then once you're addicted, there's a strong possibility that you may start initiating tobacco use. And in fact, many of you who paid attention yesterday know that the National Academy of Sciences issued a report. It's called The Public Health Consequences of E-Cigarettes. And one of the conclusions in that report is that there's substantial evidence that e-cigarette use increases the use of ever using combustible tobacco products amongst youth and young adults. So let me just say this again. For kids who are not smokers, and you start with e-cigarettes, there's a strong likelihood that you will begin smoking combustible. So that's a big problem. And not only that, there's evidence that kids who smoke cigarettes and use e-cigarettes end up smoking more cigarettes rather than less. So it's kind of a conundrum. That evidence is moderate. We're still learning many things in this field, and so look for updates as time goes on. And then lastly, from this report on population consequences of e-cigarettes, it's very important to note that there's just not evidence, or limited or insufficient evidence, that e-cigarettes are a useful tool for cessation from cigarettes, both with adults and with kids. We need a lot more research in this area. There's been some meta-analysis that are equivocal and show no effect. So look at that report if you're interested in these features. So in addition, the reason why kids are fascinated by e-cigarettes is there's a substantial amount of marketing. It's increasing every year. Analyses of the marketing, either online or through radio or TV, or sponsorship of sporting events, etc., look very similar to the types of advertising strategies that are used by combustible tobacco companies. So we've got the flavors and we've got the advertising making e-cigarettes look cool. You've probably seen online there's many examples of smoke ring contests and things of that nature that make that also sort of attractive to kids. Forwarding the slide, here's just a few more examples of advertisements. Many of them you probably recognize. So kids are highly aware of e-cigarettes. They're attracted by the flavors. They're attracted by the ability to blow the big old smoke rings, and they're curious about what's going on with them. So you're seeing now, which is a cutout box from a YouTube video, which shows that sometimes e-cigarettes can explode too. So although that is becoming a more rare event as the manufacturing process for e-cigarettes is improving. So they're evolving rapidly. One of the things that I do like about the public health response is now most e-juice containers are child and tamper proof. So that's dramatically reduced the calls to poison control centers and accidental poisonings by children, which sometimes have been fatal. So there's some issues with that as well. Disposal of the cartridges on college campuses can be a problem. We've noted it here in UT Austin, where they found disposed of cartridges in preschool centers with partial liquid inside of it, which is topically problematic too, especially if you get it in your eyes or if you drink it. Again, I'm a little bit stuck on forwarding the slides there. So this is a cartoon, and this came out several years ago, where the clerk is saying, well, they might be safe, they might not. This new report from the National Academy of Sciences, Public Health Consequences of E-Cigarettes, is right now the best place to look at the overview of the health consequences of it. They are current to within last summer. So that's a pretty good report. And I'm going to introduce Duncan Van Deusen, who's going to take over this next portion of the presentation. Thank you all very much. Any questions, type them in the box, and I'll answer them a little bit near the end.
Great. Thank you, and welcome everybody. We really appreciate your being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing about the trends that Steve described. So the first and foremost is Steve and his team at UT School of Public Health was asked by the Surgeon General to do a report on youth use of e-cigarettes. That request came in 2015, and the report was published at the end of 2016. And it was really in response to this tremendous and unprecedented spike, 900% increase in use of e-cigarettes by youth, which is basically 18 and under. They also looked at young adults, and we really zeroed in on the 18 and under population because Catch already has a lot of health programming for schools. And so Steve and his team led the effort to create a program which we call Catch My Breath, which is focused on youth e-cigarette prevention. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach, the best practices that we've used to create that program, and then some of the evidence that we've seen from the trials. So the program now is at this point about a little over a year old, year and a half old. We've already introduced it in 30 states and over 200 middle and high schools, reaching over 50,000 kids. So this is really thanks to a large coalition of support, including private foundations, state education agencies, local education agencies. Maybe some of the people on the webinar have heard of Catch My Breath. Maybe you've already started using it, told your schools about it. If so, thank you. If not, and you're interested, obviously, we'd love to work with you. And unfortunately, since it's such a problem that it's getting out quickly. Schools are really looking for a response to be able to educate children, and by extension staff and parents, about what e-cigarettes are, what the harms are, and what the health reasons are to avoid them. So we also formed a partnership with CVS Health, which has done a number of courageous things about tobacco control. First, you may remember in approximately 2014, they removed all tobacco products from their shelves of all their retail outlets nationwide, which was a real game changer. And then on top of that, they have a $50 million investment pool for their Be the First program and have funded a number of great organizations that are working on various kinds of tobacco control work, primarily in the youth space. And we were very pleased to be one of their grant recipients. We got a $500,000 grant for 3 years to make this program, Catch My Breath, available for free to all middle and high schools around the country. And our goal is to reach over 200,000 kids during that 3-year period. So we're well on the way. The theoretical background behind the Catch My Breath program and all the CATCH programs is the social cognitive theory. And social cognitive theory, of course, really focuses not only on individual knowledge and individual behaviors, but group behaviors. It focuses on the fact that all of us operate in response to role models, external role models, and if you want to truly change behavior, you have to properly model it. You can't just tell people, you have to show people. And so in sync with that pedagogical theory, the program focuses on disrupting the norms that many kids hold, that of course everybody's using e-cigarettes, developing not only awareness of why it's detrimental to use them, but the skills to actually resist, the skills to understand what the media messages are, the skills to understand the peer pressures, and also to just develop healthy attitudes and beliefs about e-cigarettes. So we not only measure increases in knowledge, but we look for curiosity, susceptibility, intentions, and we hope to reduce those so that the kids are not only not using e-cigarettes, but have the right attitudes to resist the temptation to do so in the future. We also align the program with a number of academic standards, including national academic standards, health education standards, and other subject standards like ELA, and with Common Core. So schools that choose to use this program will find lots of tie-ins to academic standards that they're already trying to achieve anyway. The organization of the program, after going through a couple generations and getting feedback, we settled on a format which is 4 sessions lasting 35 to 40 minutes each. So it's a grand total of about 160 minutes, or 2.5 hours of programming. We recommend teaching 1 lesson a week for 4 weeks. We've had schools experiment with different formats. Some will do it every day for a week. Some will spread it out more and do it over 6 weeks or more. But 1 lesson per week for 4 weeks seemed to be about the right dose. We integrate a lot of different educational strategies, partly to be flexible to what works within schools and different populations. So we have cooperative learning groups, peer leadership groups, discussions, goal setting, interviews, analyzing mass media, and also a project to create an output, a media output around the program, so to help kind of set in concrete your learning and your intentions to play back what how you would help convince others not to use these cigarettes. We also made the program flexible to be taught by a lot of different kinds of teachers, because not all schools, of course, have the same format. So in particular, we created a physical education supplement for physical educators to use. That's often a great way to do health programming. Sometimes the setting is a tobacco educator, a community educator that's coming into the school. Sometimes it's a nurse or school counselor. It could be taught in a homeroom. It could be taught in science classes. There's a lot of different formats, and we've definitely found with all of our health programming, if you're going to do it through schools, it has to have a large degree of flexibility, because a lot of, every school does it a little bit differently. In the vein of this is not just a curriculum, we think of it as a program, and some of the features that distinguish a curriculum from a program include things like signage. So we have sets of signs that schools can put up around the school to reinforce the messages that they're learning in the classroom. On the left, you can see 3 signs that we developed for middle schools. And so when a middle school signs up for our program, they'll get a pack of 12 signs, 4 of each of those 3 that they can put up around the school. And they put them up on a rotating basis. And then on the right, you can see 3 signs that we developed for use in high school. So similarly, when a high school signs up, they get those. And that's a great way of reinforcing, vast majority of our schools do use the signs and have told us that they feel like that helps reinforce what they're teaching in either the classroom or gym or whatever the setting is. We have the entire curriculum available online through our catch.org platform, which is very simple and user-friendly. Just to give you an example of what it looks like online, so you can see this is session 2. There's a table at the top that breaks down the parts of that lesson, how many minutes it should take, what materials should be used, etc. So that all that information is available online, and that's turned out to be a really important format to keep things up to date. Steve mentioned Joule, for example. That's something that really wasn't on the scene at all when we first created the program. And it's very important to be able to respond quickly to new information and new trends. And the online publishing format really helps us to do that. If we were trying to publish in manuals, it would have taken a lot longer and been a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult to diffuse, new information. Here's a couple of results from the pilot work that we did. We got some great feedback from teachers that the lessons were culturally appropriate. They felt confident in their ability to teach the lessons, had the necessary background that they needed, and above all, at the bottom you'll see 68% agreed that their students liked the lessons, which obviously we'd love it if that were 80 or 90 or more percent, but when it comes to middle schoolers, getting 68% to agree on anything, we feel like is worth something. I know, in my household where I have middle schoolers, trying to pick out, the evening entertainment, for example, we usually don't have 68% of people agree on anything. So on the student side, the number one finding really was 7 out of 8 students, in other words, 86%, said they are less likely to use e-cigarettes as a result of participating in the Catch My Breath curriculum. So that was really very encouraging, and that goes back to what I said earlier about intentions and susceptibility. If we can make a difference there, then that will have a downstream difference on the actual behavior of how many people end up using these in future years in high school and college and so on. We have done a lot to work with various kinds of community support to get this program out. So we really value collaboration with universities, state health departments, local health departments, etc., community hospitals that can help us with awareness, recruiting, train the schools. I should really say help the schools and help the kids rather so much than helping us. Implementation, monitoring, communication, and support. So there's a whole ecosystem that goes around making sure that the program is actually done. It's not just putting a textbook in a box and sticking it in the mail. This is our contact information. For more information, you can go to catchmybreath.org. There's a blue button on the page that will take you to the enrollment form, or you can go straight to catchmybreath.org and enroll. So if you are a school and you're interested, that's where you go to get more information and sign up. If you are in a state health department or community health department, please feel free to share this information within your communities, and we're happy to help. So thank you very much. And again, as Steve said, we'll be happy to take questions at the end. You're going to see a poll that popped up. If you're interested in receiving the slides that we went through or a sample lesson pack, if you want to review access to the program or any other information, just click yes and we'll get that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Van Deusen. As we're transitioning to the Aspire curriculum, we have a few questions, and the poll is still up. So we have a few questions from registration and from our audience. Has Catch My Breath developed any co-messages which combine traditional cigarette prevention and vaping device prevention?
Well, Catch My Breath is a program that was specifically designed for e-cigarettes, although, of course, we mentioned combustible tobacco use and cigarette use and discouraged its use. So there's some programmatic elements to do that, but we felt that e-cigarettes are such a different type of nicotine delivery device compared to all the others, and their rapid popularity meant that we wanted a program specifically devoted to that.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, has there been any research in the space of, and I'm paraphrasing, combining e-juices? I believe this question refers to combining the flavored liquids that are used in electronic cigarette devices.
Well, I have not read that myself, and I have not fully read the report that was released yesterday that I mentioned earlier from the National Academy of Sciences. There's toxicity elements into that report, but I have to finish it. I haven't read the whole thing. It's 600 pages, but I got about half of it done.
Okay, that's commendable.
My guess is that there's a standard set of constituents that are inside of e-liquid, which is propylene glycol and vegetable oil, as well as the flavoring and then the nicotine. So if you mix different flavors, you've got the 3 different background of nicotine, vegetable oil, and propylene. Different flavorings have different types of what they call cytotoxic properties. So For example, they removed cinnamon as one of the flavors because it showed a high degree of outside of the human body killing lung cells when exposed to it. So there's a little bit of potential, but I don't think that that's off the top of my head a major issue, but I refer you to that report that came out yesterday.
Okay, and our final question before we transition to the Aspire curriculum, is Catch My Breath available for Canadian schools as a resource?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is yes, it certainly is available. Obviously, that's an English-speaking environment. We do not have the program translated into French. The only part that we don't support right now is international shipping of the posters. So we wouldn't be able to get you hard copies of those. However, we do have downloadable versions, so you could print your own, and all the other program resources are absolutely available to Canadian schools.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we encourage all of our participants to continue submitting questions. We will have another Q&A session at the end of the Aspire curriculum presentation. Thank you, Dr. Kelder, and thank you, Mr. Van Deusen. And we will now have Dr. and I apologize for butchering your last name, Dr. Prohorov, presenting on the Aspire curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you. While we're transitioning, I should mention that Dr. Prokhorov provided some assistance to our Catch My Breath program and is an international leader in this area. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say again.
All right. Hello. I'm very glad to be involved in this wonderful webinar with so many participants. And it is a pleasure to share with you what we were able to achieve until today with our program Aspire, which is quite seasoned. You know, actually, Dr. Caldron and I started Aspire a long time ago. It was like 2002 when we received a grant from National Cancer Institute, and then it was basically designed to address the smoking prevention and cessation among youth. And then the program actually morphed into from being on the CD-ROM to on the internet, and then we at MD Anderson we were able to actually make this program quite different, and so add some more products to it. And finally, we're now at the point of changing the program into something that would stand out, that has no peer in the world or nationally, and truly it's just one of a kind. You know, usually we are complaining that we don't have enough funds to compete with the tobacco industry, and our programs usually look kind of funny compared to what the tobacco industry is doing. Because they're not quite to the par with their quality of their visual, the scripts and things like that. So we're changing this, we're leveling the playing field, and we will be competing with them, so providing the counter marketing of tobacco products. So let me, So let me go to the, unfortunately I cannot advance the slides, so if you could do me a favor. Yes, thank you so much. So the goal is essentially is to raise the new generation of youth free of nicotine dependence. And we're talking about nicotine dependence in general. You know, I commend my colleagues at UT Austin for that wonderful Catch My Breath program. And I strongly recommend you to use it, of course, for e-cigarettes. But our philosophy is to actually address nicotine dependence as a phenomenon in general, okay? Because my problem with single product sort of programs is that you push that down, and unfortunately kids get scared, and they might try something else. They say, well, if it's e-cigarettes are so evil, so bad, well, I'm going to go to old good combustible tobacco. So we need to do justice across different products, because if you think about it, the tobacco industry is trying to say, stop smoking, start vaping. Right, so they kind of try to separate the two behaviors. Okay, what we try to do, on the other hand, is to put it underneath the one overarching problem, which is addiction. Addiction. Cigarettes is addiction. Cigars, addiction. E-cigarettes, addiction. Smokeless tobacco is addiction. And we also have per multiple requests from different schools, we actually added marijuana to our program. So now it's a brand new program made possible by our philanthropic friends who help MD Anderson. And I'll show you some pieces of it. I'll show you, hopefully it's going to work, the Hollywood-style preview trailer of the program. So you'll see the kind of quality we're talking about. So we also have, I have more than 36 years of experience in creating tobacco prevention programs, starting from very simple, text-based, printed programs, curricula to now, we're actually working now on virtual reality in the next generation of programs, but currently we have this Aspire, the new version of Aspire that we're very much proud of. We are somewhat skeptical about teacher-taught curricula because, unfortunately, we have some rotation in teachers, and we really trust in technology because technology is something that kids love. Okay, and also. Typically, when you come to audience of kids, it can be a classroom or just a lot of kids, like maybe 100 or 1,000 kids. We had all kinds of different places where we were promoting our program. When we said, okay, we're going to be talking about tobacco, and everybody's like, oh no, I mean, it's so boring. No, what we try to do is to make sure that it's not boring. So we're going to show them that you can actually play with this. It's like a video game type education that engages kids, that shows them it's nothing but boring. And secondly, it's aligned with all the tasks that are schools, educational tasks that schools need to deliver to the kids in social science, in math, in biology, and all kinds of things. So that makes schools very happy. Not just schools, but other organizations too. And so entertainment education is a key component of the tobacco prevention, and that's what we are all about, entertainment education. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So, well, this one's supposed to be animated, but that's all right. So, essentially, again, we trust in that health education from elementary school through middle and high school and out of high school, because these are sort of the pivotal points when kids, start their smoking behavior. And elementary school, not so much, but we need to give them some sort of first, very simple message as to why it is not safe to be in smoked environments and things like that. And we're working on a curriculum that would be released, we hope, within a year or so, that is geared towards elementary school students. Then we also, middle and high school, that's Aspire. Aspire covers both of these, so it's 13 to 18. And we have a few college-based programs as well. So we remember that spectacular failure of their curriculum, unfortunately, $210 million investment that led us nowhere. So we're mindful of the fact that we really need to provide for continuity of education from very, very elementary levels, like it's written here, to very complex. Okay, can I have the next one, please? All right, so Aspire is an evidence-based study we published. You can see on the left side of the slide our paper. You see that myself and Dr. Caldron are leading authors here, and it basically showed that the original version of Aspire was able to reduce tobacco smoking initiation. There was three-time decrease in smoking initiation, but what's really amazing is that the kids with the highest risk of smoking initiation, which is kids who with depression, kids whose parents smoked, whose friends smoked, who had low resistance skills to an offered cigarette, they benefited from the program most. And our 18-month follow-up showed that smoking initiation was about 7 times less among these kids who went through Aspire compared to the same risk kids who did not get Aspire. So that shows that the program is very effective. Now, on the right side, you can see a paper by our Romanian colleagues who basically replicated our trial in their neck of the woods in Transylvania and implemented it among Romanian and Hungarian kids. And guess what? It's still effective. Still very well received. So, they're actually planning on disseminating this program in 4 municipalities there, and we have a great interest internationally from different colleagues. Next slide, please. Okay, so Dr. Caldron and Duncan Van Deusen were talking about these vaping products. Indeed, the industry is becoming so creative. Look at this. This is another interesting thing that is marketed now to youth. As you can see, this girl is pretty young, and this is, they say, a wonderful way to, take vitamin B12. And so now my question to this is, well, why do you have to inhale just like you inhale, a vapor, an aerosol from e-cigarettes, or smoke from cigarettes? In my opinion, this is a renormalizing smoking behavior. And so that's why we need to be mindful of the fact that the industry is always, just like my previous speakers told, the tobacco industry is incredibly creative in making sure that it becomes norm. Everybody thinks of vaping being absolutely normal thing. It's not smoking, so let's just not mix the two. While we're saying, no, let's mix the two. Let's say that this is all about addiction. This is about nicotine. This is about renormalizing. And kids do see these things and they say, well, maybe it's okay for me to try something else, not just necessarily the vitamin. So the next slide, please. All right, so now we are going to show you a preview of our new program, which is being launched now. And this is a program, Aspire, that covers a broad range of tobacco products and marijuana as well. So please, answer these questions. I appreciate you're answering the questions while we are loading this video. Hopefully it's going to run, and it's going to give you a very good idea of how different this program is from everything you've seen, because this is a full-blown gamification, game-type experience that really shows the quality of this program.
Anybody there? Help!
Kia, is that you?
Luke?
Yeah, it's me.
What's happening?
You have to help me, Kia. Go through that door. Smoke City. It's the tobacco capital of the future.
Hold on. This is the future?
Yes, but we can stop it from happening.
How do I find you?
I don't know. I'm kind of stuck somewhere.
Who is that?
That's me. Follow him.
I wish I could have been there for you.
Kia, you're here for me now.
I currently smoke. I'm still a smoker. I've attempted to quit quite a few times.
Just know that you're not the only one going through that. Stay encouraged. Find something better in life.
Take care of yourself and love yourself. Everything you need is right here. Trust yourself. You'll make the right decision. You have to stand for yourself to be able to stand for others.
May I, at this point, to give, the opportunity to Dr. Ashish Arya to say a few words about the program.
Thank you, Dr. Prokhorov. I hope everybody is able to hear me. But it's been a pleasure to work on the Aspire's revision to bring up the new Aspire. It truly has been an amazing journey of many months, almost a year. And currently we believe if you would go to mdanderson.org/aspire, you'll be able to click on the student link and you'll be able to go to that website's trailer section. You'll be able to watch the preview there as well. I'm going to try and go on to the next slide to see if I can explain to you a little bit of how Aspire's dissemination works. Almost like Catch My Breath, which Dr. Caldron and Mr. Van Deusen were talking about earlier, we aspire to spread Aspire across not only our state, but multiple states. We are happy to see all of you participate from across the nation. And make this easier for the person to champion the administrators who have the students or the young adults or teenagers log on to the program to see the program. In order to enable those administrators to understand what's going on, how many people have logged on, what they're able to do, at which stage of the program they're in, we have this back end of the administrative portal for Aspire. And essentially you can see this screenshot allows on the admin, on the super administrator side, for us to create multiple locations by the central spot here at MD Anderson. And this is the same view that you would essentially get to be able to tell within a certain program in a certain time period, whether it be a week or a month or a year, how many students have logged on, which of them have completed the program through all the modules, and what their scores are, how many are incomplete or still progressing, and multiple variations of reports are possible essentially with some simple clicks. So that's what we have realized enables the person, the administrator, to really feel good about implementing the program and getting a feedback that yes, things are working. And so if you put in some dollars behind it, or if you put in staff behind it, it is very justified to look at this and go, yes, this is working and it's useful. But this is the continuing story. In fact, maybe Dr. Prokhorov, you'd like to carry on with the story a little bit? Surely.
Sure. Yes. So that's in our opinion, and of course it's a state of the science. that when you design a program like this, of this quality and the level of relevance to your target audience, you have to go with engaging students, high school students, and middle school students in the process of development of the character design, music design. That's why, you know, it's so sad that you couldn't hear the you couldn't hear the sounds, but really the music, all these wonderful work that our score writers were able to deliver to us, and it's over 60 people worked actually on this program this time. And this is actually two interns from a local student here, from a local school here in Houston, Fur High School, that participated in designing some characters and helped us out. And this young lady with interesting looking hair, she's a cancer survivor. She was treated at MD Anderson, so she's very passionate about, you know, designing something that would help kids stay away from all, you know, addiction-causing products. So we're really we're very happy to have these two young ladies working with us very closely as summer interns, and we were able even to pay them $5,000 each through the women faculty at MD Anderson, and that made us all very, very happy. So can we have a next slide, please? So that's one of the slides that, the posters that they created, basically telling the reason why they decided to go with this particular characters and how it's going to resonate with millennials, because it's key that the shelf life for each program, especially for kids, is not so long, because, you know, hairstyle change, you know, stuff like that. And then we hear comments, oh boy, I mean, that old Aspire is so 90s, so that's like not relevant anymore. But this time we're very concerned about the fact that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, this program is still going to be relevant. And it's very, just like Dr. Arya said, we're going to update it as new products show up. And we will be, monitoring the use of the program and see what's going on. So we will be able to basically stay on top of this program. And you, should you decide to use Aspire, you will also have this ability to see how many students went through the program, how many completed. In the end of each successful completion of Aspire, students are receiving a certificate of completion, which essentially is something that they can be proud of, and they can frame it, they can put it, in their rooms, whatever they want to do it. But it's important. The key thing is that they learn. What I don't have, unfortunately, in this presentation, but we have over 90% of kids who went through Aspire. They report that they learned new facts about the program. They also told us that they would love to share this program with their friends and family members. And they also, it does influence their interest in trying something that would contain nicotine in it. So that makes me very, very happy about the future of this program. So we have a very good indication that it's going to be a good program. So next slide, please. So that's what Dr. Caldron has shown before, but kind of byproduct. But you can see that some of the products, such as hookah, for example, which is a water pipe, it's still quite, it's kind of going down lately, but, it's up. Those bumps, that's what concerns me most. Because we had those reductions even in tobacco, in combustible tobacco before. We have a very healthy decline in combustible forms of tobacco. But you never know what to expect from the tobacco industry, and they're trying hard not to go out of business. So that's why we are addressing all these products in our program. So and as you can see, there's some decline in e-cigarettes, but like Dr. Keller said, the most recent report shows, an increase in e-cigarettes as well. So next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the smartphone apps that we design as well in our program. And by the way, my program is called it's a Youth and Family Cancer Prevention Program, and our mission is to create educational products of the highest quality to address first and foremost tobacco, and that's what we're doing. So one of our strengths is designing smartphone apps. And it's important because we know that the use of smartphones particularly among youth, is quite, large. It's almost nearly ubiquitous. So 92% based on Pew survey. The digital divide is actually not so pronounced. I mean, even low SES students still carry pretty nice smartphones. And so it's also can be done in environments that don't have Wi-Fi. So that's why we designed these programs that are not Wi-Fi dependent. So next slide, please. So one of our recent apps is that on the yellow background, the guy in the hat called Vapor Chase, and that's a video game that addresses the dangers of e-cigarettes and hookah use. So any of you who have either Android or Apple product, the smartphone, you can download it right now from the App Store or from Google Play, and see for yourself what it does and what kind of issues it addresses. But basically, it in the game form, it shows the dangers, depicts the dangers of use of hookah and e-cigarettes. So next slide, please. So this is another app which currently I don't think it's available because it used to be available only for iOS devices, but now we're making it for both Android and iOS, and we're also making it less static. It's more animated, and it's called Tobacco Free Teens. It sort of has some elements of Aspire in it, but the message of Aspire. So we cover all tobacco products and non-combustible products as well. So next slide, please. So this is supposed to be a little video, and I hope can we play it? It's just a piece from Tobacco Free, the new Tobacco Free Teens, that shows some of the activities, what you can do instead of using tobacco. All right. So, and then finally, we have not only apps for healthcare, I'm sorry, for kids and for parents, but also we designed apps for healthcare providers. And what this is called QuitMed Kit. And this QuitMed Kit is now it used to be only for iOS products, but now we made it for both Android and iOS, and it's being uploaded to the stores. Will be soon available for downloading in 3 languages. I forgot to mention that Aspire is a bilingual product. It's in English and Spanish. So this is important. We try to make it as culturally sensitive as possible. So the QuitMed Kit is available in English, Spanish, and Chinese because our partners from Hunan province in China expressed great interest in getting this app, so we made a Chinese version of it. So that basically is a pocket version of the clinical practice guidelines for healthcare providers who want to do a good job counseling their patients. So it talks about the meds that help quit smoking. It talks about behavioral counseling and things like that. How to optimize your precious time in the office to do the best job, in counseling. So this app is soon will be available for downloading. So next, please. So this one is, I think it's supposed to be a little video that is not playing, but it's all right. Okay. So we have a very, very ambitious dissemination plans. The ultimate goal, we would like to see Aspire in at least 80% of the school nationwide. The schools and universities would definitely be on our radar in terms of collaboration and building good relationships. And working with different types of schools like KIPP schools, alternative schools. We're looking forward to working with faith-based organizations, particularly in Houston. We're working with interfaith ministries and various religious leaders. We have certainly our eye on the community organizations such as YMCA, YWCA, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H, and healthcare settings and so on and so forth. Many organizations, and any organizations that are interested in doing that, they're welcome to participate. Of course, NCI designated cancer centers, medical facilities, and so on, and international collaboration. We're absolutely interested in going to Canada. We're interested in we already are in South America, in Central America, in Mexico, and many other countries are interested in participating with Aspire, with us. All right, so this would be the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prohov. Can we get everyone else back on camera, and we're going to go through some questions and answers? It's always a fun part of the discussion. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. Technology.
Good job, Alex.
Hi. How are you? Nice to see you. I think Duncan and I are the same team. I think we're wearing the similar shots.
Yeah, exactly. No blue.
That's good. That's good. So, Nichols, I'm going to start pulling some of the questions that are here. Is this curriculum tailorable for or designable for outpatient clinic or primary care settings? Either of the programs.
We've tested. I mean, this is out. We've tested Aspire in clinics. And what's interesting is that we trained the doctors to refer their pediatric patients to Aspire. And what our study has shown is that about 60% of those kids who were referred to Aspire indeed accessed the program and went through the program. So, and that was done not only based on their self-reports, but we were able to objectively detect that fact of accessing Aspire. So that, and we already published paper on based on this study. So yes, we are certainly willing and able to provide the program beyond the school.
Yeah, in the case of Catch My Breath, we're a primary prevention program, and it's delivered by teachers, teaching staff. So we're at this point not working in that arena.
Okay, this is a question maybe slightly similar from Catherine Vernberg, and she said, can these programs be administered in a mental health facility, or are they best suited for school environments?
In the case of Catch My Breath, again, it's probably best suited for a school environment, and part of the reason is because there are group activities and group components. However, you could use the more didactic part of the curriculum in a one-on-one setting, whether it be primary care, mental health, or whatever. So if you cut it down to that portion, then yes, I think the content would have some value in that setting.
Yeah, in case of Aspire, yes, the answer is yes. The mental health facilities can access the program, can implement it. I'm not 100% sure it's going to be just as impactful as in regular public schools or other types, but that's why we're actually currently working on the new program that is designed specifically for mental health facilities that would address the needs of these kids. But we did work with our colleagues from psychiatric institutions, and they reviewed Aspire, and they're eager to get it.
Great. Another question from one of our registrants. How do you assist those adolescents that do not feel that anything will happen to them if they continue tobacco use, and they already have seen TV ads and information regarding that many health risks are little, if none?
Yeah, well, there are a bunch of good answers to that question, I think. And two things I would say are, number one, we do want kids to understand that it's not true that the health risks are little to none. They may have heard that. There are a lot of fake sources of information, but we want to provide some authoritative information and help for peers to translate that for each other. So we actually there was a great campaign that was put on by some kids here in Texas, which was basically safer does not mean safe, and they had all kinds of really funny examples of how doing something that's safer, it doesn't make it okay. So doing a tightrope walk over a 20-foot drop is safer than doing it over a 200-foot drop, for example. But so that's one thing. And then I think the other thing that we really try to do is the purpose of the program is not to, if you will, persuade or coerce everybody into not using, because that's a great way to generate rebellion and resistance, right? The purpose of the program is to empower kids with information and let them make their decision. Hopefully you encourage them to make the healthy decision, but we really focus on very much of an empowerment message. And previous generations of programs, for example, might have concluded with, a pledge that I'm not going to do this. And what we do is we conclude with a decision and a pledge to stick with what your decision. Now, we hope, of course, what that decision is going to be, but we really try not to fill in the blank for kids. Let them make that decision.
Okay, makes sense. Next question. How can community health workers successfully approach the topic of high-risk teen girls who smoke, or even young women who smoke, with the result in desire or ability to stop smoking? So I think the question that they're asking is, again, how can they work with high-risk teens or young women who smoke and get them to stop smoking?
Well, if we're talking about specifically young women and girls, the high-risk girls, we've seen some interesting results by gender, and we can pretty confidently conclude that young ladies who are high risk, and in our case it would be kids who are exhibiting depressive symptoms, who are exhibiting anxiety, withdrawal symptoms. They just really not so well positioned to quit. Well, it really takes time to to work with these ladies, and importantly is to provide them with the right messages. That's why we really handpicked for Aspire the messages that would be salient for this subgroup, and who would who would prevent them from even trying. Because what we're saying, okay, if you're smoking already, all right, so quit as soon as possible, and because it's it's absolutely critical that the sooner you quit, the you're better off for the rest of your life and life of your children, and the quality of life in general. Well, if you don't smoke, but you're you're kind of difficult person, then don't try to, because once you get hooked, then you're adding yet another problem to your sort of repertoire, which is nicotine dependence and withdrawal, which makes your life even more miserable. So that's what we try to do in prevention and cessation sides. With young ladies, yes, we have addressed that. Specifically, also a very important thing is once you become pregnant, usually women stop smoking, but the problem is that once they, postpartum, they go right back to smoking. So that part is also addressed to some extent in our program. So we try to really go as detailed as possible with all these processes and trajectories.
Can I also add, though, for either program, is there a role for community health workers? Is there a role that they can play in either of these programs?
In the case of Catch My Breath, the answer is absolutely, and we already work a lot with community health workers. So there's two main roles that community health workers can play. One is to be an evangelist and ambassador to the schools, to tell them this programming exists, it's free of charge, here's how you implement it, and then hopefully to be able to go back and observe, are they implementing it with fidelity, do they have any questions, etc. The second mode would be that the community health worker can teach the lessons themselves in the school, if that's the nature of the work they do, and that's the type of relationship that they have with the school district. And both of those arrangements are very common. We see quite a bit of each.
That applies to Aspire as well, very well, because we actually had a study in some schools where we had champions, and it could be certainly community health workers who would be sort of trying to champion the program, even though the program is low maintenance. It's it's basically you just get it on your computer and it starts doing its magic. But you still can benefit tremendously if a health worker could sort of debrief, could discuss it with the kids, could basically reinforce the message that they just learned from the program. So yes, absolutely.
If I may add to that, the fact that the community people are another section that the school organizations miss is what we really are interested in. So the community health workers, the coordinators, or for health systems, those are the folks that we really request to take the program and share it among their constituents. So, for example, what Dr. Kokra was talking about earlier with the clinics that we tested out, those are either school dropouts or students who don't get a chance in their schools to be exposed to the Aspire program. That's how the community health workers can actually take up our program. We can make the registration details such that they can give the program either in their community on the computers in the public libraries, or allow the folks to have a registration done, and they can do it at their home computers or in their school computers, wherever they wish. They can take the Aspire program. Quick note back to what we were referring to earlier about the question regarding the TV ads and other places where people don't believe. Aspire takes a dig at that as well. So if someone was to go through the Aspire curriculum, they would see we have in multiple places talked about what Dr. Caldron was talking about, how celebrities are being used and how they abuse the system to try and catch these people into the cycle of this is great, this makes you look good. And in multiple modules and multiple lessons with proper video and audio emphasis, we have dealt with that so that the people do get convinced that whatever they see is not reality and how they're being played. That's kind of addressed in Aspire. Thank you.
I got a question from a participant in Pennsylvania. The question is, I've received calls about vape shops still selling e-cigs to minors. Do you have any stats on how often this is still happening and what actions can be taken by someone?
I don't know the statistics on that, although I do know that there's been some studies recently published that I have to catch up with that have operated sting operations to answer that very question. My guess that it's probably as high as with regular cigarettes. So it's I'm assuming it's a problem, and I think the proper actions are to notify the state health department or state authorities that they've found a vape shop that is selling underage to minors and report them. So if you're in charge of a state or local community, you might want to make sure that citizens or people who work with youth know these vape shop call-in lines to report them. I'm quite certain it's a problem. I just don't know how big it is.
And sometimes that enforcement may happen at the local or county level, so they could also call the county health department.
In the state of Texas, when they put in the age of sale laws, they put in a separate clause that allowed for these sting operations where you can actually make or use underage children to attempt the sting. So I'm assuming some other states are doing similar things in order to collect that data. But there is a recent study, I just heard about it this week, but I didn't read it, from California on this very topic.
You got a lot of reading to do.
I know.
Okay, so last question. When a youth is introduced to tobacco at the age of 8 to 11, which this participant says is common where he or she works, are there ways to get them to quit that are different than adults? And they have quotes of examples of brain development or psychology or some other means of getting them to quit that would be different.
Well, clearly, I don't know if you want to answer this, Alex. I'll just add that clearly from the Surgeon General report that I was part of in 2016, there are health risks that are age dependent. So the earlier you become exposed to nicotine, the worse the potential issues and its interactions with your brain and ability to make effective decisions. There's a lot of neurobiology in that area. And you're more likely to become a heavier smoker and more addicted. Intervention strategies for 10-year-olds with cessation have not been forthcoming. I think this is an area where we need more research, particularly with e-cigarettes.
Yes, I would agree with that, and I would add that unfortunately we underestimate the power of nicotine addiction sometimes. We used to think that it takes a few years for young people to develop substantial nicotine dependence. We're learning more and more about this, and there are wonderful research conducted in Massachusetts by Joe DeFranza and others, showing that actually nicotine dependence develops a lot faster than we thought, and sometimes it takes just literally, a few puffs or just one cigarette, believe it or not, to rewire your brain a certain way that you would be having a really hard time quitting. So that's why we really need to be on top of that and convey this message, because kids don't understand. They think that they can, try and nothing happens. Well, this is a Russian roulette we're talking about. If you're genetically built to develop nicotine dependence fast, you will. And then chances are you're going to be struggling with it.
Great. Okay, we've come to the end, but before we close, I think it'd be it'd be apropos to get at least one final thought and one final takeaway from each of you. So we could start with Dr. Arya. What's the last message you'd like to have everyone leave with?
You're right to unmute my mic first. The programs that you have seen today are really, not only are they free, but they're really useful. And so the dependence on nicotine and tobacco, that addiction can be taken away, but it depends on all the people that are attending this webinar to take up the resource and take it to the community. So we really look forward to your interest in this. Not only is Catch My Breath and Inspire, not only are they very important programs, but as you've probably seen, there are so many apps available as well from our shop that you should be able to download for free and utilize it. Someone mentioned about Vapor Chase being restricted to 17 and up. That's probably an Android issue that Google somehow, maybe an iPhone or Apple issue. But we're dealing with that. Unfortunately, that whole story of how they assume the licensing and what they do. On Android, I believe it's open to all teenagers. But in either case, back to this really nice resource, thanks to the organization putting these two programs up for dissemination. And please utilize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Prokhorov, final comment?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to kind of re-emphasize the importance of us kind of joining our forces around fighting addiction, because no matter what the source of nicotine, we know nicotine is extremely powerful addictive agent, and it's important to convey this message to the kids. It's really amazing how different they react once they're taught in depth what this is all about, what's inside the cigarette smoke, even what's inside that aerosol. You know, sometimes the tobacco industry is saying, well, there's nothing wrong with it, or there's nothing wrong with hookah. You know, it's a much safer product. But the point is that, you know, if you start using it from childhood, and chances are you're going to develop a condition that we probably don't know yet what kind of condition, because it's not enough time passed since all these products started showing up in, you know, large quantities. But the point is that let's unite in this important public health mission, fighting nicotine addiction, and hopefully we'll succeed in raising tobacco nicotine-free generation of Americans. Thank you.
Great. Catch My Breath. You guys are on one camera, but you get two thoughts. So please, two closing thoughts.
Okay. Well, I'll say that I just want to emphasize the importance of the community in really developing ownership around any of these efforts. We don't see Catch My Breath as our program. We see it as your program. We see it as the kids' program. So we have a lot of flexibility in working with communities and schools to build it into what they do. If they want to use some of the resources piecemeal, if they want to call it something different to align with their curriculum, naming, and strategy, we like to have a lot of flexibility around that, because we feel like community ownership is the most important thing. And the reason that we have Catch My Breath in a 501c3 charity is because it's essentially in the public domain. So this is your program, and we're here to help you use it in a way that's beneficial to your community and to your kids.
And from my perspective, I just have two major points, and that is first, that Catch and Aspire were created by many of the same people. Alex and I have worked together for 20 years or more. We've worked on both. I believe that that they're not. You shouldn't think of one versus the other. I think implementing both is a good idea. The research says very clearly that kids who are exposed to tobacco prevention messages starting about 5th grade in an annual dose of tobacco prevention all the way through, say, 10th or 11th grade. So my recommendation is to implement one or both of these programs in schools every year. So starting in, well, certainly by 6th grade. So it's nice to have two different modalities to be able to do it. Not every school can find the time to teach a program like Catch My Breath every semester, let's say, or every single year. It's nice to have the online option with Aspire and vice versa. And they can both be used in after-school settings. They can both be used in with sport clubs or in a variety of different settings. So let's not forget that we need to continue to implement this regularly. It's not a one-time only thing. And then the second point is related to the first in the sense that there are many other strategies as you start layering on top the tobacco control movement. So, for example, recently the city of San Antonio in Texas is going to have a age of 21 for sale of tobacco. These sorts of public policies applied to individual municipalities or at the state level are great ways to lower the rate of initiation with kids, as is taxation. So to the extent that you're able to engage in that, plus mass media, if you look at the Truth Campaign and the offspring of the Truth Campaign in various forms, those things do work. So we hope that you're able to access and make use of these two programs and to try and get them implemented in your schools. We stand ready to help you all and to eliminate tobacco and to eliminate, well, tobacco's too small now. Eliminate nicotine is my goal.
Thank you all, gentlemen. I really think this was a great and very informative presentation. Just a reminder for everyone still in attendance, in the lower left-hand corner, you'll be able to download the PowerPoint presentations. You'll also be receiving an evaluation, so please feel free to complete those because we use those to design and develop our upcoming webinars. On behalf of the South Carolina Tobacco Free Collaborative, I'd like to thank Dr. Keller, Dr. Van Deusen, Dr. Brokahoff, and Dr. Arya. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.